Yeah, two epic founders. Both genius ladies, like both have raised a ton of capital, government or not, like raising money in any capacity is a big deal. And both have raised teams. Like Faye, you've got a team of 5. And exactly, Peak, 11 people, a lot of different hats, a lot of like different jobs within this founder role. And like crazy work ethic, crazy success. I got to sort of work at I got to work near both of you. I'll dig into work in a sec, but because you're both so impact driven, that's why I asked the clean tech thing, sorry. But no matter what, I mean, probably all of you are impact driven in some way, right? That's usually why, entrepreneurship is so alluring, because it's like, I can make a difference, and you can, and there's so much building involved and possibility and creativity. Just curious for both of you, like, how do you keep, and I know you're in a different role now, but like that impact meter, like how do you keep that high? How do you keep aligning to that North Star? Because it's so hard to stay aligned sometimes, and you mentioned paying bills, and like I'm curious with the pivot, like I think that those first customers you have to sort of, as a founder, sometimes you have to sell your first product to not your ideal customer, or it's not exactly the impact you want to make. Like when I was doing my research, I was like, I'm going to sell my product to grocery stores. I was like, as long as I get the tech and I can produce flour in this way, like I told you guys about a couple weeks ago, someone will buy it. But whenever I spoke to investors, they were like, no one wants to buy that. You need to talk to pharma, find a valuable molecule within the flour that would be of higher sale price, so that we are interested in buying in, because it's such a torturous and long journey. And personally, when I was told that, I was like, F off. Like, I want to do what I want to do. I want to make the impact that I want to make. But as we all probably know, the market isn't that linear, and it doesn't, you do need to make those little baby steps of, like, sometimes it seems like you're not aligned in vision or impact, but you are. And yeah, I'm curious, just because you guys have both been speaking to that, how have you, continuously aligned to that and manage that in your work?
I mean, I can start really shortly of just having a North Star for your business and it doesn't have to be the North Star that is like your company's brand and vision. Like, this is our mission statement, or this is our vision statement. That is more, like the public facing brand aspect, but like honestly deep down knowing like why you're doing this, and starting a startup is such a long journey. Like, am I willing to do this in 5 years? Am I willing to do this in 10 years? Because if you're starting it now and you don't have a solid North Star, like it's gonna be very hard to navigate the times when it feels like you're not on path to make the impact that you want. And if you do have a North Star, you're able to like gut check yourself. You're able to come back into like, maybe it's like monthly, maybe it's you and your co-founder or your employees have a check of you like, this is actually aligned for what our like North Star is to what we're working towards. And if you don't have that, that's just like the first step, I guess, in this all. But if you don't have that like truly intrinsically, then making the impact that you want to make is just going to be blurry like the whole journey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have to say, very inspired from Shay's story, because you can see that original seed from the undergrad experience, that vision leads her to FCSB, or even today is leading a huge program, 900 students, about talk science, and everything is still centered, right? But everything doesn't have to be that linear. So I think, very inspiring story. And as of Livent, we're an ingredient company. And I think we need to define what is impact, what is the vision. Is the vision that we are making ingredients selling to, let's say, plant-based burger, and everything else is a no? I think that's if like it's an entrepreneur's own journey, and if it feels right for you, then it is, right? So I would say for myself, I think the North Star is not really say a business, a product, or a customer. It's more like a principle. We want to make the impact in sustainability. And for me, I personally want to remove the animal from the supply chain while still help us to have nutritious and delicious food, right? So then all these different like adjustment does not really matter because we can sell a premium ingredient, but that will still be helping to make maybe a smaller dent to the animal industry to replace high-end collagen from that before we can make a bigger dent to remove meat from the diet. So there's always a gradual process, and I'll say maybe it sounds like a big pivot, but on principle, we're still making impact on the same line. And at the same time, like have a co-founder, have a team. I think a lot of things that we have to discuss although we have a small team, but we need to make sure is everyone happy when we make the difference. Say, hey, now we're working on bioactive collagen for joint health, and I'm just looking at our lead like protein scientist. It's like, what do you think? You have been working on collagen for jelly for whole cut fish for 2 years. And what do you think about this direction? He was happy. He was like, oh yeah, I can see that. I only need to make a tiny little bit. And even before regulatory approval, I want to eat that because I have joint issue, right? So it's like the North Star for the organization become a gut check between the team member if everyone's still happily working together or anyone anxiously say, I want out. So I think it's really a question of gut check for the entrepreneur, everyone, yourself.
Beautiful. And also that gut check and what you just articulated more eloquently than me, this gradual progression, it kind of feeds into this habit stacking, time management portion of the talk that I guess we'll lead into, because I think it's so, I want to ask the audience, but personally, sometimes you have a vision and it's like, let's get there now. You know, I want to be great at time management. I want to be an amazing worker. I want to be a successful entrepreneur, whatever it is. It's such a long journey, no matter what, like just a human is long. And what you said about this natural, slow checking in progression of and vision can change and expand. I think that's important for all of us to remember in finishing this course and also in life, because what you set out to do a year ago when you started in this master's program is probably quite different, or maybe not, but I'm sure there's been variation as to what you envision your startup to be now, or where you're going now till the next year. And basically, I'm trying to open up the conversation of like, be gentle and just keep checking in. And so, in that respect, what are you guys struggling with right now in managing time and managing what's on your plate with school or family, personal life, the balance of it all? What are some things that you care to share or are interested in asking about?
My question has been around, how do you know when you hit the block? How do you know when to pick up? So how do you know maybe this habit doesn't need so much energy to leave it to guys? How do you know you should just keep pursuing the same thing over and over?
I missed the first 2 lines.
So how do you know when you've hit the wall? When you hit the block or stop? How do you know when to pivot to something else?
So when you've hit a block, when to pivot?
Well, I think maybe just share my own opinion. It depending on who is pursuing that, right? If it's you or your co-founder or team member, I think again everything go back to if it's me, I'll say, do I still think it is right? What do we want to achieve? Who is a decision maker in the team? Let's say in our company, it was me. So then it goes back to, do I still think I want to do this? And what are we as a team can achieve towards the vision, right? So for example, the fundraising landscape has been incredibly difficult for the plant-based world. So a lot of food tech investors, basically they don't have any funds or they fail to raise their rounds. And of course, everything trickles down into a few previous company that raised hundreds of millions of dollars does not deliver, and therefore companies like us is also very difficult. So perhaps in month 6 or month 9, that I'm still fundraising and perhaps need to really change the business model or some foundation of it, and just like asking ourselves, okay, so how much runway do we still have left? How many months can we still pay our employees? And do we feel this right? Should we keep pursuing this? And how about 3 months from today we run out of money? Does the company dissolve? And we still want to maintain and keep pursuing. And everything goes back to the why, right? Does the whole business model that motivates you? So go back to what Tori said about North Star. I think for me, for example, the conclusion I have and asking myself maybe a million times is, do I still want to pursue this stressful, business? Is really go back to the impact. Is, well, okay, so if we have 3 months runway, so we either need to demonstrate to some investors that we are providing the impact and we can achieve commercial success. And we need to convey that vision and persuade someone. And do I still believe myself can make the impact? I ask my team member every day, do we still believe in our business? And if the answer is yes, if the founder self is still motivated to do this, then yes. But the person is really, whatever the head behind, say you hit a wall, I cannot do this anymore. Then there's nothing anyone else can do to turn this around, right? So again, I think the answer is really like yourself, what are you feeling?
I would just add to that of the actual question you asked of how do you know when you're stuck and how do you know when to pivot? I feel like those are two different things because the feeling of being stuck and even from a time management perspective stems from this lack of meeting goals or even setting goals in the first place. Mm-hmm. So like for your own startup from a time management perspective, you should have a goal for every milestone that you've set up for your, like maybe it's we want to be revenue generating by like this month, we want to hire our first team member, like maybe those are like even grandiose goals. You'd have really small goals, we want to launch our website, we want to do something, but feeling stuck, if you can't quantifiably say like, okay, well we've launched the website, we checked that off, we did something else, but now so there's a feeling of not making progress that makes you feel stuck. And if you're checking off those goals and you have them, systematically placed throughout your working time, then oftentimes that feeling, like that intrinsic feeling of stuck, goes away because you actually feel like you're accelerating. You feel like you're making progress. And that's like a feeling of stuck versus the feeling of being like, okay, we launched the website, we did the thing, we've met our next milestone, but we're still not overarching like making money or something like that, right? That's like this feeling of, should we pivot? Mm-hmm. Should we change the business model of looking at a different route to follow? And then you start from ground zero again and say, okay, what would the milestones be if we pivot? But as long as you're kind of, what's the smallest step forward that you need to continue moving forward, right? What's the smallest thing you can do to continue moving forward? If you have that small step, then oftentimes that intrinsic feeling of stuck goes away from like a time management perspective as well. And it's more looking holistically from the business side of things of like, does our business model not work? And that's when the pivot question comes into play. Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah. So I kind of wanted to weave this more into your anecdotes. But I was just wondering, how do you guys balance knowing when to delegate versus when to take things on yourself? And I guess also, how do you know when is the right time to be taking on?
That's such a good question.
I can start because I really like
Bigger team.
I like there's the Eisenhower matrix. If you guys have heard of that, and it's essentially just basically a matrix that is low priority to high priority is on one axis, and then not urgent to very urgent is on the other. And if it's urgent and important, that's what you do first. And so that's how I prioritize like what I'm doing each week. Like how I plan my week is I sit down on Sundays, I look at all of the tasks that I have to do throughout the week, and I have like a Miro board, which is just basically like a virtual whiteboard, and I will sticky note all of the tasks into one of these 4 matrix. And then after that, I'll take tasks and time block them into my calendar. And that's how I go about it. So like to delegate specifically is in that quadrant of it's important, but it's not urgent. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to picture the quadrants in my head now. And that's where.
No, it's the opposite. It's urgent, but it's not important that you do it.
Right. Sorry guys, I just have it all on my computer all the time. Important but not urgent. And so I think for those tasks specifically, when you have a team, and I think as an entrepreneur, oftentimes like you don't have a team when you're first starting out, so you play a jack of all trades, and to delegate is really like a privilege to have somebody who you can pass tasks off to, and deciding when to do that is often, it's time bound to, if it's super, super urgent at this time, then I'll probably do it myself. Like I would just and this is, we can talk about work-life balance and, like hustle culture and all of that as well, but it's like if it needs to get done, I'm willing to stay up until like 2 a.m. to get it done because it's in that urgent and important area. But if it's not, and I think the way that you define important is also kind of nuanced to who you're delegating to. Because I usually have 2 questions that I would ask myself of delegating of like, is this the right person? And as in like skills, capabilities, and things like that to delegate that to. And this is just like my own personal thing. Like, do I trust them to get it done? Because I've had the experience of having people on my team who are just like not lazy, but like they don't get stuff done, and you end up either like having really serious conversations with them or like letting them go, things like that. And so asking those 2 questions of delegation, because where delegation fails for me and like in my experience is when you give a task to somebody who doesn't have the right skill sets, or you don't trust to finish it. And so it's not worth it for me personally to like to delegate a task to somebody if I don't think like they're capable of completing it. That's when I would just take it on myself. But if they are, letting go is then like the 80-20 rule, where it's like I'd rather them do it like 80% done is better than 100% perfect. Like you're gonna delegate, you're gonna have to let go. They're gonna give you something back, and it's gonna be like not how you want it perfectly, but at least it's done better. Like done's better than perfect. And so that delegation kind of area of I want it done, I know it's not going to be perfect, is like how I've learned to let go of the delegation side of things. Yeah.
So would you say that a part of it is also just dependent on the people that you find?
Yes. 100%. That goes to like hiring good people and making sure the skills, like EOS model, right person, right role, like things like that. But if you don't have the right people, there's like a nuance to it as well, I think, where sometimes if maybe they don't have the skills and it's like there's a recognition on your side of I'm going to delegate this to you, rather than giving you, it's going to take me an hour to do, and you know that, I'm recognizing that this is probably going to take you like 3 days because there's going to be like a cognitive learning curve for you to even just Google how to do this in the first place and for you to learn the thing in the first place. And so if that's where you're delegating, and it's not necessarily that they don't have the skills yet, but you're recognizing that as you're delegating, there's like a leniency and giving them space to learn and be creative with the tasks that you're giving them is like up to you as the person who's delegating to recognize. Because if you give that task to somebody who doesn't have the skills, and you say give it to me in an hour, it's gonna be like crap. But if you say I'm giving you the space to learn and have more time to do it, you give them extended amount of time, they're gonna come back to you with something better.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the point. I think very similar principle happened to our team. But maybe first I want to ask a question. When you ask about delegation, are you talking about having a team you know what kind of work they like to do, they don't like to do, or say you are looking to delegate into consultants from like Upwork?
I think I'm talking more so about a team that like you've worked with. I guess like it's like you have a to-do list. These are the things that I have to accomplish this next month, and it's like having that balance between okay, I'm taking on just enough, or I'm taking on too much, and I should be relying more on the people that I'm working with.
Right, so yeah, I absolutely agree with what Shay just mentioned. For us, we like to dedicate to our small team member. It's more like important work, but it's like maybe we'll balance 80-20 in terms of 80% of work is important but not urgent. 20% is maybe less important, also less urgent, right? Because everyone, especially when it comes to a small team, close to your heart, they also want ownership. They want something that they know is important. But if you give them something, let's say you have a jungle list of 30 things, and there are 10 things, you're like, yeah, maybe they're important, I don't really know. You give it away to someone, and someone else give you some feedback, maybe the work is 80% done. But are you going to look at that if it's not very important? But then they kind of don't get a feedback from you. They say, oh, I'm not working on something important for you, so I don't know, I'm not engaged, right? So I think delegating is also a relationship building. Is exactly as what Shay mentioned, hire the right team members so that you know what kind of work they want to claim as their own, home as their baby. So similar type of important work, and then they can keep having it. And if you do have some trusted like team members, and they'll say, I myself also give some urgent work, they say, well, I'm not great at content drafting. Maybe it take you like 5 minutes to come up with a blurb. I still need to like polish it up, but I trust you're good with deadline. I'll just give that first thing to you. They also feel good. They're like, oh, I'm taking a great responsibility. And suddenly the deadline's tomorrow. So Faye is going to stress about it, but I should know and give her something before that. So I think it's really, as what she mentioned, hire right people, have the quadrants, and use that as relationship building and have everyone hold a piece of the whole task.
That's awesome. And you both touched on, and even just asking you're doing this, you both touched on all these great qualities that make great leaders, right? Like considering, because it's one thing to delegate, but if you give, like Faye said, if you give all these shitty jobs or like these things you don't want to do, but no one wants to do, and that's all you give your team, you're not empowering. These people that you're trying to build, that you said you trust, but you don't, you're not giving them real needs, real hard tests. And you're not giving them learning opportunities. So they're not empowered, nor are they like growing into the role. So it's a great question, and there's so many nuances we've hit, which is it's great that you're thinking about that. The Eisenhower matrix is it's so simple, but it's such a great way to organize. It's such a great way to organize tasks. And the other two quadrants, one of them is later, something like that. Schedule it. So if it's not urgent, but it's important, that you can do it in a few weeks or at the end of the week. But the last quadrant is drop it or, delete. And that's also an important part of like clearing the plate, literally. It's like, does this actually matter? Is this my perfectionism? Is this me wanting to just like control the whole process? What can I drop? Because you can't do everything, and what you can't delegate or you can't push off, like schedule, what can you drop?
I will say in the drop quadrant though, it doesn't mean you're never gonna do it. Like it might be like, so for me in my personal process and what I do is on a weekly basis I have this quadrant, and so it's drop it for this week. Like it's not even gonna hold space in my head for this week because I'm dropping it. But then when I start the next week, I refer back to what did I drop last week? Is it important now? Right? Like, does this matter for me to do this week, or is it still a drop for this week? So it doesn't necessarily mean, because I had a really hard time dropping things to be like, well, this is not that it doesn't matter, but for me at least having that mental switch and the framework of dropping it doesn't mean never, just means not now, like really helped me let go of the drop category.
That's awesome. That's awesome, because I'm like not even practicing what I preach. I just put everything in later. So that's really, maybe like organize a matrix by week and then like you keep revisiting. That's so smart. You had a question.
I just wanted to know, your methods in case you reach out to your industry experts or the regulators who are aware of the problems you are trying to solve, but they don't really, let's say, entertain you. They're not really getting back to you at the time you expect them. They should reach out to you, and it's really affecting your timeline with regards to how you're supposed to move. So how do you deal with that? What's to be done? Do you reach out to your university? Do you reach out to your peers? How do you deal with that?
So your question is about if you reach out to understand, validate the market
Yeah.
or ask question, but they don't entertain the question or respond to you, how do you deal with?
Yeah. You know the rules and the regulations. You know what they're looking for. You know what your customers want, and you know the authorities who are involved to do the work. But when you reach out to them, they're not doing it at a pace where you are supposed to be happy with it or content.
So I guess the question is, then are you firmly believe all your arguments are true? You are dealing with a problem that is burning, authority is involved, they're supposed to do that, but they don't get back to you. Are you still sure all your previous assumption or argument are true? Because if that's true, it should be on their priority list. It should be top one, right?
But they've never said that you're wrong, or they always say that you're right, it's the right thing, it's needed, but they're not really following up with what they speak.
So I think this is very common in a place. So people are nice.
Yes.
Like in Canada, people want to say, oh, you're so smart, you're doing a very cool technology, this is super important. If you're asking them, are you willing to pay for it? Right? Are you willing to have a skin in the game? Or are you even willing to spend 5 minutes of your time today to get back to me on this? If the answer is no, maybe there is something behind what they say or the nice thing they say, right? So I think how to deal with it, it would really be like how to design the approach. So I think maybe just two things I would recommend. Number one is, okay, you want to meet your timeline. So maybe this is an important but not urgent problem for them. I'm just following your principle. Then can you find someone that is also urgent problem for them? So basically turn that to a numbers game. You have your timeline you have to meet. So if you reach out to 5 people, then if only 10% of the people or 10% of the users, they're important and urgent problems. So your response rate is going to be 0.5. You might or might not get even one answer. So how about if you reach out to 100 people? That requires hard work. Then the same, you get 10% possibility that for someone is urgent and important if all your assumption is right. So you get 10 response, your timeline is met, right? I think that's like number one. Number two is potentially when you come up with assumptions. When you say, I know they need it. I know they say it's great. I know authority is involved. So ask more hard questions. So from the get-go, when you make your argument assumption, you say, okay, so if we have a solution, I'm thinking about charging this price. Is it reasonable for you? Can your organization afford it? What is your typical budget involved in resolving similar problems? And if there is a budget they can actually give you or validate your number, then that means they potentially have a skin in the game. Otherwise, they say nice things, the problem is true, but yes, there are a lot of nice to have solutions, but not urgent, not burning, so they don't necessarily feel like they have to do something today.
I love the way that you said, like, people are nice in conversations, right? And people, I think there's kind of two sides to this as well of, like, you can only ever control what how much work you can put in and when you respond to people. You will never be able to control the speed at which people respond to you. Like even with urgency, even with saying like, hey, following up, bumping this in your email, and like, everyone knows like customer discovery outreach, like it's a numbers game. And so the only thing you can control is potentially like literally reaching out to more people. Like you want responses faster, you have a 0% chance of getting faster responses if you don't reach out to anybody, and you have a more than 0% chance if you reach out to like 5 people, and then you have a 10% chance if you reach out to 100 people. You have a, like the quality of your work putting into like reaching out and customer discovery is gonna affect your timelines, but it's also gonna affect how much time you budget for, customer outreach, discovery, these like official, government, whatever regulatory conversations, and adjusting your time commitment to these like outreach and discovery conversations is probably gonna, in the long run, affect your response rate. So like that's just something from like a time management side. It's like you have to like kind of like invest in the time up front to be able to get more time in the long run of these responses. But I think what you're saying of going into these conversations and like expecting validation is like the worst way to approach a customer discovery conversation. Like you're not going in for someone to tell you, yes, this is a good idea. The best conversations are when someone tells you like, this is what I would change, or like I would buy it if, or like all of those types of things are where you get the most value out of those customer conversations. And so if you're leaving and people haven't followed up, it probably is some underlying issue of like how you're actually approaching the conversation, less about they're just not working on my timeline. Right? So, because if they, like Faye said, if they truly, really had like this burning, pressing desire, important need to have your solution, they would have responded by now.
And just to add to both of those great points, many points, like a few things. You're speaking really vaguely. I don't know what regulatory body or authority you're talking about, but if you zoom out, like government buying cycles are very lengthy. They're different than consumer. Become familiar with the industry that you're working in and what's normal. And to Faye's point, and Shay and any entrepreneur will tell you the same thing, literally everyone's nice to your face. Everyone's gonna say, yeah, I'd buy that. That's cool. They don't wanna say it's no or never. People are so polite. The mom test is literally a book and a whole framework on exactly that. Never talk about your solution, because your mom, if you tell her, oh, I'm sending cats to the moon, she's gonna be like, oh, you're brilliant. That's a great idea. She loves you. People are, even strangers, people are nice. They're gonna say the same thing. And so if the buying cycle is long or people aren't responding, I would encourage you to cast your net a little wider. So do more market research, try different angles, and also investigate different industries. Because if are there different segments that you could serve, that you can connect with, that might have shorter buying cycles, areas that you can investigate and do more research in. And then if like you keep getting, again, sort of external signals that maybe not, it's to like Victor's point, pivot, right? That it's all data you have to take in and consider. Yeah, great. Anyone else with a question? But there's, Ted.
So a lot of the students are, and it's probably as founders experience this as well, are they're at a really, really busy time. They have exams, they have to start it themselves, they have personal lives, families, relationships, the whole works, and their laundry list is out the door. So Eisenhower Matrix, amazing framework for us to figure out how to organize things, but in addition to that, while going through all of these different operational tasks, how do you create time in your day or week or season essentially for creativity or for new ideas, or to continue to be able to think beyond just the immediate tasks that have to be done?
Making space is hard. I like there's a quote of, everybody says they have to find time to do things. Everyone gets the same 24 hours in a day. You're not finding it. Like you're not gonna somehow find another 25th hour. You have to make time, right? So you're not, and making time for things that are important to you or expressing creativity, things like that. Something that I, just like one tactic that I like to use is there one thing that I can do today for myself that's gonna make me feel fulfilled? And it's just like, it can be in the morning, you can be like, it's really important to me this morning. It can change, sometimes like every week is consistent, sometimes daily it fluctuates, but I check in every morning to say, if I check off every task on my to-do list, like school, I mean not school anymore, but like work, everything, today, and then I go to bed, and sometimes I'm still just like not feeling like fulfilled as a human being because it all is just work, and you're checking the boxes. So is there one thing that I can do today, this morning, at nighttime, like I check in the morning, you can check in at night, that's gonna make me feel fulfilled? And there's super simple things, like I wanna have coffee by myself this morning and just like enjoy my cup of tea or my coffee, and that to me is gonna feel really good. I'm gonna spend 10 minutes reading my favorite book that is like a fiction or like anything that you guys like, or I want to go for a walk today, or I want to work out today, and it's like as long, and this is like there's the work check boxes and then there's the personal life check box, I typically only give myself one life check box a day, right? And that one life, but like that one out of my like regular schedule, but that one life check box is like I'm going to feel okay and good and comfortable and fulfilled with myself if I check that off. And then all of the work stuff is like, well, I already feel good about this day because I did the one thing, and then like everything else work-wise. And that's how I like at least try to save space, whether that's 5 minutes or an hour or something like that. And it has to fit into your time blocking and things like that. I like different techniques for time blocking as well. We can talk about that afterwards. But yeah, what's one thing that you can either start or end your day with that makes you feel good?
I was thinking, I think something very classic. How many of you have like inspiring or super cool shower thoughts? Right? And shower is something you're not forced to look at your devices, right? You cannot. Maybe you're in the washroom, you're still looking at your phone. So something detached, an environment to detach from the device and have a clear space. I myself is, well, a mom. I don't even have my exclusive washroom space, because my daughter can creeping in whatever I'm doing, wherever, right? But I think some space and thinking it's just shower, I feel some sparkle activity in my brain, and also going out for a walk or run. Sometimes I don't really have a hack tool to really think about how to categorize or take things from a box, but I think something very important is if you ever have a space, some space that you're thinking you're not really doing anything, and put all the operations tasks aside and ask yourself, all the overall school or family activities or entrepreneurship, how are they sitting like in my guts? Are they aligned with what you are building as a career, right? So by end of the day, it's like what you want to achieve through this activity matters. It's not about ticking the box itself. So you can spend maybe 10 hours to prepare for exam, you get an A minus. You can spend 15 hours, 20 hours, you get an A. You spend 40 hours, you get an A plus. But what do you want to achieve? So how much resource you want to put in, and have that honest conversation with yourself, right? Because everything is a bottomless hole here. So we're talking about entrepreneurship. You can put in 40 hours or 80 hours a week, and school equivalent, family the same. So it's really like align expectation to yourself. Where do you want to use these as your stepping stool to be a better yourself, maybe 1 year down the line, 5 years, and then using that to think about how many are the operations box you actually want to turn off or leave that way.
The only other thing I would say, that's a really, really good point as well, but really just like there's a point of diminishing returns for time where, like you said, you study for 10 hours, you get an A minus, you study for 20, you can get an A. Are those 10 hours you just put in like actually worth it? For like there's a point where it only takes you 10 hours to get A minus, but it's gonna take you another 10 just to have that tiny incremental exchange of A minus to an A, right? And like I know this class is pass fail, so you guys are fine. But for those things, you can think about them for anything, and like your deliverables that you have is like, what's the point of diminishing returns where like the incremental time that you're going to put into doing the task like really doesn't give you that big of a return. And if it's not that big, then like don't spend that time doing it. Like where you're at is probably good enough. But one other thing is just like small tactical thing that I know works for me for saving space specifically with all our crazy schedules is there's two things, either like have an accountability buddy or actual, like I said, group, or pay for it. So like I won't show up to my like volleyball league if it's free because I'll just be like, oh, that's fine, it doesn't matter. But if I've paid for the class, and like this is a privilege also, but like if I have paid for the class and I've invested into it, then I'm like, damn, I have to go to volleyball because I've now already paid for it. So it's like those two things, and like the accountability side of things is also like if you have a group of 2 people and you know they're people who you from the onset you say like, don't sugarcoat it for me, hold me accountable, I want to do these things. And so if it's like I want to go for a walk with you every day every Friday at noon or something, then those people are going to show up and you are now accountable to somebody else to save space. It's still like a practice of self-care because you're trying to get yourself out of the chaos of only just doing maybe work all the time. But those are 2 things also that I'm like, if I pay for something, I'll go and save space for it. And if I have somebody else who's counting on me, I'll go and save space for it.
That's a really good habit. I just want to add my own 2 cents. When I was like doing super deep research, you guys can attest, you can all feel for that. Like when you're so hyper focused on a problem, and I was like reading all these super deep SynBio papers, I was always thinking in tiny like gene type bites. I came out of like months of this, and I came up, like I surfaced after being below water for so long, and I was like, I don't think about anything else. Like I'm always on this hyper focused, hyper linear tunnel vision, as you said with medical school. Like I only have one track mind. So I started carving out a curiosity corner for myself, which was like on Fridays or at least once a week, like do nothing related to my work and just dive into any TED Talk that sounds interesting, or like read an article or consume something that's different and expands my world horizons. Because I think as founders, like the further you go on your journey, the more focused on this problem you become. And it's really important. It's counterintuitive because you think that focusing all of this time, all your mental bandwidth on one problem will make you better and better. But like all science shows that you need both sides of your brain. I'm a huge left brain, right brain person, and you need to give that right side of your brain that's focused so intensely on your schoolwork, on your startup, a break. Because just like any muscle, if you work it endlessly, you're gonna hurt it. You need to give like a rest and work that left brain of like meditating, laughing, cooking, curiosity corner, whatever it is for you. Like this is exhausted all the time. In order to make it work a little better, turn it off and work on this side. And so that's kind of what your question is. And those are a bunch of different ways of doing it. But yeah, paying for something, like paying for a meditation app, that's how I got into meditation. Highly recommend.
Time block it, I'm gonna review X, Y, and Z at 2 p.m. on Tuesday. Close every tab on your computer. You know what I mean? Like every other tab on your computer, like silence your emails, whatever it needs to do to make sure that your focus is actually on that block of time. Because I was guilty when I started time blocking that like I would write the time block in, but then this task would take like a little bit longer than I thought. And I'm like, oh, well, I should eat lunch. And then like all of a sudden I get to the end of the day and like that 1 to 2 p.m. I just like ignored it and never went through it. But if you actually set really firm boundaries for yourself, and this is a really good way to learn time management from like a practical stance of if you time block 1 hour for something, it ends up taking you 2. The next time you time block something similar into your calendar, give yourself 2 hours. Like don't go back to 1 hour and be like, I'm gonna be more efficient now. Like you have to iterate on the blocks that you give yourself as well, and then set really firm boundaries to say, if this isn't finished, and like this is a process you can have for yourself. If you don't finish a task, what I do is like on Friday, I leave like my whole Friday afternoon open because I know there's probably at some point in time throughout the week where one of these tasks is gonna get pushed potentially, or I'm not gonna be able to complete it to its fullest, but it's still gonna be maybe due on Friday or due on Monday, so I wanna do it. And so I leave like basically like an overflow period of my week on Fridays open for all of the tasks that potentially in their time block didn't get done during that time. But like time blocking will change your lives if you're not already doing it. It's so therapeutic to have it all out in front of you and to be able to see like what needs to be done when, what are you prioritizing, yeah, I just highly recommend.
That's awesome. And you answered a question I had, which is like if you bleed over your time,
Mhm.
that's an amazing workaround, like solution to keep a day open or an afternoon open. Because also with time blocking, by adhering to something a goal you set, it's a micro goal. I'm gonna work on X at this time. You do it. It's a tiny confidence boost. Like it's a way of building in self accountability that makes you feel good. So it's all these little wins throughout the day. So you go to bed at night and you're like, I had a good day. Like I did everything I set out to do. That's awesome. Faye, do you time block?
No,
What
I
do
don't.
you do?
I have to say that as either on the customer outreach or fundraising phase, I have to open my calendar for booking, right?
Yes.
So a lot of times my calendar is pretty hectic. I don't really know what turns on. I only know the first night I will look at my second day schedule and I kind of have some idea, okay, so how many last minutes meeting I book in. But I think on the time management, what I would emphasize on is result driven. So on one hand is, yes, we can time block 1 hour to do one thing. I think Shay also mentioned this. Is it get done, right? Does it bleed over the 1 hour or not? So I think for me, what I do is because my schedule is kind of less predictable, but I know a few days will be, let's say Wednesday will always be hectic from like whatever morning to the afternoon will be back to back, and a few other days, Fridays generally a little bit more relaxed. Then I basically the Sunday I do a very similar thing. Sunday or by Monday morning, then I have a jumbo list of what I have to do this week and what is the most urgent. And every day I'll put a star on the task to get out. So it's not just like I'm spending time doing these, they have to be delivered. And what are potential return I'm looking for getting. For example, if I say I reach out to 40 people, but that's an action. Then I will say, okay, so this will take me maybe, let's say 20 minutes per email. If it's customized, it will take longer. But how many return am I looking to generate? Is the churn a 5% or is it 1%? And how big a pipeline, how big a task I have to go through? But I have to say I'm a big leader. Like all these rational tasks is during my day, creative probably like at late night or early morning, whatever, 4 a.m., whatever it is. But it's really emphasized on what I'm looking to achieve that day or that week. That will be the center of the time management, because nothing else really matters about how many checkbox we ticked. If we don't get a return, the business is not moving forward.
True. Very true. Different strategies. I'm more like you, but I'm trying to learn time blocking. So like
It took me a long time, and you're not gonna be good at it from the start, like 100%. It took me, this is kind of like how do you know when to give up on a habit type of thing. I'm not gonna lie, I gave up on time tracking like 3 or 4 times over the past 5 years, and it took me a while to get it to a point where it like works for me personally, and I feel that it's useful, and that's for any habit as well, right? Like habits don't just all of a sudden on Monday, I'm gonna like go 0 to 100,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be the best time manager, and I'm gonna time block my week. It's gonna be great. Like a gradual approach might also make sense, where you introduce a new habit, like you introduce time blocking for like Wednesdays and Fridays, but you know the rest of your week is still flexible based off of what you're working on. And so like be very mindful and give yourself grace on the fact that introducing these new tactics or even how you prioritize the Eisenhower matrix and stuff, it's gonna take time to either like iterate for what works for you and to make it consistent as a habit.
amazing. And that's what I was trying to say earlier, right? Like all these things, no matter what you're doing in life, everything takes time. Just we want it now, but that's not how life works. Practice makes perfect, or more practice. And exactly, it's a process. I love that, like start on Wednesdays or something like that. That's a good, cool, very bite-sized, digestible. Okay. Actually, I wanted to ask you guys, like, since we're talking about things that work for us, does anyone want to share tactics or hacks or things that work for them? Because this is not just a one-way. Like, how do you feel about the way you run your days and your weeks and manage your time? Is anything working? Is anything not working? I guess we can all. Yeah.
Yeah, so just adding on to that, like, I feel like time blocking is one of the most effective things, like having that structure.
Yeah.
But then, like, the most detriment to that strategy is it's when you're not fulfilling what you say you're set out to do.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there's a case for not having balance sometimes, because I know there are some hard believers of like having like segments of your life. So like for these next 3 weeks, I have exams, so I'm gonna focus more on school. But then the 3 weeks or the next month after that, we're doing a funding round. So like I'm just gonna like eat, sleep, breathe this, and
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. So because I know like that's kind of kept me on track sometimes. Because
Yeah.
like before you're talking about how like it's like what is enough is putting in this much more for like an A minus instead of or B, like whatever. Like for me, there's certain times where it's like, okay, my grades don't matter right now because there's this that takes precedence over it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that was sharing or kind of question as well.
Yeah. That's a great both share and question. Do you guys want to touch on it?
Well, I kind of agree. I think it's really personal, right? It works for everyone themselves. And for me, I'm like, I think my coworker once kind of described me as like industrialized. And as a new, that time was like I would just come to Canada. I was doing my PhD and while doing my postdoc and commercialize the technology. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, okay, so you're working in front of your computer and you're absorbed to something and we're just chatting loudly beside you, don't hear anything. So I'm just like fully absorbed, say, this is one phase, I need to get this one thing down and nothing else matter. And if it works, I think that's great. And I think maybe just personally share now, now I'm fundraising, so it's probably just need to worry about 3 things. Number 1 is fundraising. You to get money in the company and that leads to hundreds of tasks. And number 2 is the company is still operating, right? There's no last minute burner that I'm not dropping the plate. Everyone is still working on the same thing. And number 3 is my family. My kid is at home, I have to take care of her. That's my, take your word, left or right brain, right? So that's like relaxing from the founder role and taking care of family. So I think, and if you're saying, well, is there time to rebalance? Not really, to be honest, right? But I think that works because I kind of get relaxed from founder role by like supporting the family and vice versa. So I think what you shared, like a phase, like exam phase or say, and then funding rounds, that makes sense to me.
Kind of following up on that scenario there, do you find it's better for you to compartmentalize these aspects of your life and be fully, let's say, immersed in family and then have work and then for other cases, exams, etc.? Or are you finding ways for them to kind of like overlap or bleed into each other and then as a result of that, the workload balances out?
Well, I guess if it's for me, I think maybe go back to Shay's great point about monotasking, right? So if I'm with family, maybe some like low chore tasks, I'm washing dishes, I'm thinking about some idea, but otherwise if I'm with my daughter, I'll say, okay, I'll tell a story and I'm not going to think about my work. And I think family is like great power. It's really a peace place to say, okay, you should not think about work, right? Otherwise it'll be a little toxic. So I think for that side, maybe a little bit compartmentalized. But yeah, I don't think multitask or like bleeding in like work really well, but I do try to manage the schedule. Let's say on the weekend sometimes, it's like I'll work with my husband about who take care of our daughter for going out because toddler need entertainment full time, right? So, and then we can think about if we need to work overtime, how does that work? So that's get into like maybe overlapping the schedule to manage, but yeah, I don't recommend multitasking for that base. If you address my question.
To address your kind of phases of life, is there a trade-off for, almost, I think you were gonna ask about this too, like hustle culture, essentially.
Yeah.
Or like, is there a time when that just like makes sense to just grind nonstop and not have that balance? If I'm being completely honest, like I would say yes too. Like I do think there's a time and there's gonna be moments in like all of your entrepreneurial careers where, you're doing the 2 a.m. grind and the next morning you're gonna wake up at 6 and you're gonna do your day anyways, and then by the end of the week you're gonna feel like crap and you're gonna be tired and caffeinated and completely blown out, and that's just like because you need to get the things done. And like the buck stops with you a lot of the time as the founder. Where I think balance does come into play though, and I think entrepreneurs need to be like hyper specific about it, is like being self-aware of when those ebbs and flows are, or being aware of like if you have exam season at this point, maybe don't. I know it's like hard for entrepreneurs because like things come and go and things like that, but like don't plan you're going to start your first funding round at the beginning of exam season, right? So like being hyper aware of the ebbs and flows of whatever your different priorities are, so that you can like really grind out during this phase of your life, and then give yourself that space, whatever it means. Like when I was in the depths of founder, like we were fundraising and nonstop, there was always at least like some sort of like whether it be physiological, like gut check, whatever it may be, that like it will come to you naturally, like organically, of what you need to do to be like, I need to take an hour, let's say, like after a week of just nonstop grinding, like I need to take an hour, or I need to book off one Friday just for like sleeping 8 hours that day or something like that, because that's when burnout happens, is when you don't check in with yourself like during those hustle times and ebbs and flows. Where so like I'd be lying, they'd be very unrealistic for me to be like, yes, you have to balance all the time. Like if you're not doing yoga 3 times a week, then like you don't have good work-life balance or anything. I think there's going to be times when the trade-off is you're going to have to like burn both ends of the candlestick at some point. But I think as long as you're cognizant of that, like you're aware of the fact that this week is going to be hard, I'm acknowledging that, I'm okay with that. And at the end of this week, I'm going to check back in and be like, what can I do to like refill my cup?
Yeah, very nice. Great question. Should we do one more?
Questions? Maybe speaking to the relationship aspect of it,
Good.
when we're going through those seasons of hustle and really grinding it out, how do, keeping in mind like families and partners and things like that, how do we make sure or maintain those relationships as we're going through those seasons?
Yeah, I mean, 2 things. One, a mentor of mine taught me this like tactic of bubbling people. And
Bubbling?
Yeah, it's called bubbling. I don't know if that's like the technical term, but that's what we call it. And it's bubbling where you have different groups of people in your life, and it's like I have really close best friends. And if they call me at any point in time, they're in this like trusted inner circle bubble. If they call me at any point in time, whether it's like work, anything, there might only be like 2 people in there. It's like I would stop and go for them. Those are like like ride or die, hide the body type stuff. Like that, those are those friends. And then there's other friends that are like peripheral friends. And I bubble them into this category of, maybe I see them at volleyball. Maybe that's like they're kind of these peripheral groups. And then there's like for work, there's like trusted advisors, that I work with and I trust them and I'm willing to share information with them back and forth. And then there's, just partners that are less so. But by bubbling people, it makes it a lot, and it seems kind of like strict and regimented, but it's really just like a 15-minute exercise to sit down and think about. by bubbling it allows me at least to be like when I'm in these like really deep parts of like what people am I still willing to prioritize versus not. So like if volleyball comes around and someone's like, hey, do you want to like go get a coffee tomorrow or something, and I know that I'm really busy right now and they're in this kind of peripheral bubble, I don't personally feel bad saying no to them because like I know they're in this peripheral bubble. I know that they're kind of just like a volleyball friend and that's okay. And then I'm gonna see them again, but it's like giving yourself the space and like boundaries on friendships and stuff when you're in really busy moments of time has helped me a lot. And then from like a personal relationship side of things, my fiance is also an entrepreneur and he also works like a full-time job. And so we have, I think it was Brene Brown who said it first, like 50-50 in a relationship is so archaic and old and like traditional to think about. It's like, look at your weeks, talk as your partner and say like, I'm gonna be able to give you like 20% this week.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality. You know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna make dinner or I'm not gonna like whatever these chores are and stuff. And if he's like, I also have a 20% week, then we can sit down and be like, okay, like how are we gonna get to at least 50? Like how are we gonna save space for each other? Like whatever it may be, how are we gonna like be, like show gratitude to each other this week, even though we both know we're gonna have a really stressful week and we both know that like the week's just kind of gonna suck. And then other times it's like, well, I have 80% this week, you have 20, and so like I'll make dinners or I'll do something else. Like being very transparent with like inner relationships of like how you feel like your week's gonna go and how much energy you have to put into a relationship on any given week makes it a lot easier also for your partner to recognize too. It's like on weeks that are 80%, it's like, do you want to plan a date night then? Like, and weeks that are 20, it's like, I'm not gonna bother you because I know that you only have like 20% of the energy to like give to the relationship this week. So that's what's just transparency and talking, I guess, is the biggest part of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think, yeah, Shay mentioned, number one, define the most, maybe the people you truly care at the moment, right? Because there are a lot of great people in life. People come and go, who are good friends, share great moment, but at the same time, friends you can maybe tolerate you just to maybe hide for some time, but if you don't talk to each other, you'll still be good friends. And if truly matter your buddy that you hang out every day, maybe just let them know. And when it's at the partner level and it's really come about, I think for me it's asking permission. Hey, it's gonna be crazy next couple months and I'll be travel. So I'll be home with a kid. So are you okay with that? If it's that level of commitment, but if it's like a chore level or say the time to show gratitude or spend time together, ask for permission and communicate ahead of time so that I think your partner, if it's that level, will be understanding, right? Because you're in that together, not in the business, but your life.
And I just want to add to that too. It weaves into your question of like phases. It's what you're saying as well. My husband's an entrepreneur and I was one first and then now he's one. So I've been like the doer of the like I have no time for you and also on the receiving end. I guess you too. Both of you. All of us. Exactly, they're phases like you're saying and you gotta just keep checking in. Because like there's trust in the process of like, okay, well this is a crunch time. Like this quarter is, this is an insane time for you. I respect that. I'm gonna pull up the slack. I'll run this house. And like, if it's been too long and my cup's empty, we gotta check in. And like, how do we change this? The thing with like all of this, all of life, it's like, it's constantly just checking in and adapting. And like, always taking in new data points and reiterating, getting better and better. That's just, that's how it is. And, the more cognizant of that you are, the better you get at it, I think. Of just like riding the waves, trusting the process, and then adjusting the process when needed.
The last thing I think is you guys touched on it very well, just like obviously like open transparency and like asking permission and things like that. Also like if you know points of contention in relationships, so it's like you don't have time, like your friend's now mad at you, you're not hanging out anymore. Are you telling them that you're gonna hang out with them? Like are you setting that expectation up? It's like, yeah, I'll see you on Friday and then you've bailed for the last 4 Fridays. It's like maybe it's recognizing like how you're showing up for them in your responses or in like your commitment to them, right? If it's like or people are asking you, can you come up for the whole night or something, or can we go get coffee? It's like, I can go for a 15-minute coffee, not an hour-long coffee. It's just like setting the expectation of like what you're actually available for makes a big difference for people on the receiving end of things. I think I had something else to say, but I forgot it. Well, yeah.
Maybe it'll come back. I have one more question, selfishly, but it pertains to all of us. I read this morning. I'm reading a book on personal accountability. So I'm not amazing at it. I bleed into all my time blocks, so I'm learning. And I read this thing today about Michael Jordan and coaching. And, you know, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, constantly seeking out mentors, coaches, always different perspective coaches on, you know, he had a jump shot coach, he had a defense coach. And the point of that is that we need, you mentioned it, you need mentors. You need people, and not just mentors, you need good friends and people outside of your own mind to give you perspective in different parts of your life. And I just want to ask you both, like, can you speak to that a little bit about mentors you found and people, like, how has that benefited you? Like, every successful person, and you both are already successful and so much to come, like, it takes a village, legit. How have you gone about, and what kind of success have you found in you know, expanding your network and asking for help, asking for perspective?
I think speaking about mentor, definitely, incredibly helpful. I think when I was a grad student, folks in industry say, find a mentor. It's like, what are you talking about? How do you find someone to be your mentor? Launching as, I think, entrepreneurship, I thought it would be more like a journey that is lonely, but I find actually there are more support, way more support.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, there's a whole village, right? So I think as it goes to mentorship, I think definitely turn to, speaking to myself at the beginning, I'll be like, whoever are free advisors, we don't have money or our equity doesn't count for anything to pay for like mentors, but there are accelerators, finding people. And I run through maybe a jumbled list of different advisors at different like accelerators and schedule one-on-one meetings and ask questions and be open to hear what their feedback. And then after the whatever 30-minute session or something, go through maybe 2 or 3 of them because they're free, right? So and then I go back to ask myself the question, are they telling me something I don't know? And am I willing to listen to them actually and change my habits to be something that may be better according to them? And do I agree with that? Right? And then I think that almost like also a funnel because I come across some people that I'm willing to listen to something, but maybe not 80% others. And then eventually, I'll say it's really identify the people who are relevant to is the entrepreneurship journey as a whole. Maybe they don't have to be your advisor on the company, but you can check in time to time, say, hey, I have a crisis and I really want a second opinion. Can you just hop on the call, right, on a more casual basis, but really trust it? And as you're venturing through the journey of looking for mentors or advisors, you're also looking, you will also eventually through just meeting up those network or advisor accelerators or advisors introduce you to some other advisors, you'll find some more specialized people that have really good experience, a thorough background in your industry. And that will be what is needed for the company. And for us, we do have a few advisors that have weekly meetings or even 2 meetings a week, and I will pay equity for it and really help me to view the business. So I think it's really 2 sides. One is mentor for life, but it's really who you are willing to listen to and who you think you're spending the time, they're giving you time, but each of you maybe will gain some value from it. So from your point of view, you're learning something that is unique. I hope I'm not wasting your time, for example, right? And at the same time, they maybe also are willing to coach you, open to share, and they feel good about it because they help you to grow your career because they really like you, or they help you to build your business. So I think that's a win-win situation that you know it's a good relationship.
Very nice.
100%. I feel like when I started out, I had these feelings of, like having conversations with mentors. Like I say mentors loosely because they weren't like actually my mentors at the time, but I was like, these are mentor talks, and everything they say, like, oh my gosh, do I have to like change my business model now? And they gave me all this great advice, but it's like I never really actually checked in with the fact of like, do I trust this person? Like, do they have the credentials to be giving me this type of information? And even if they do, like, how much am I going to value it? What am I going to take? What am I going to leave? Was like a learning curve, because I automatically just thought if I have a mentor conversation with someone, they know more than I do, and I'm going to value their like information and knowledge more than my own. And that's not always the case, right? You're going to end up finding people, as I said, like having more and more conversations that are more specific to your industry, more specific to like what you actually need, and it will ebb and flow potentially as well. But from like a personal side of mentorship, it just makes so much sense as an entrepreneur. Like I've had the same business coach, he's like basically half my life coach now as well, for the same like 3 years. And I've gotten the most value out of mentorship and coaching out of consistency and like continuity with a coach. And those all start, it's like, and when I coach other people in my program as well, it's like you don't have to hop on a call with someone and have this talk with them and then say, hey, do you want to be my mentor, or do you want to be my coach? It's like that's one might just like immediately scare them off, but it's, hey, can I keep you up to date with my progress? Like that's how you end the first introductory call with someone. And if they say, yeah, that sounds good, then you book another call maybe for like a month later or 2 weeks later, depending on their availability. And then all of a sudden 6 months have passed, you've had 6 meetings with them. You don't need to formally, unless you're doing like an advisory equity position, things like that, and you really want them to have like buy into this. If you're meeting with someone consistently monthly, they are your mentor. Like there's no like checkbox form to sign, things like that of like, will you be my mentor? It's, are people willing to show up for you consistently, and do you value their opinion? And if you do, and you're getting value out of it, and they enjoy coming back and they're getting value out of it also, then like that is a mentor. I think like sometimes we get caught up in the terminology of like coaching and mentorship and stuff like that, but it's really just like consistency and value that both of you get out of seeing each other. That's what coaching means to me, and it's been transformative. All the people who mentor you, like seeking mentorship and coaching, is this everyone who has done it, they've been exactly where you are. Why would you not want to learn from somebody who has been in the same situations that you've been in, have either like succeeded through it or failed in it, and now they're going to teach you your learnings? Like, sign me up. That makes so much sense. So like definitely mentorship has been like single most, I'd say, like leveraging factor of the success in my businesses at least.
Awesome.